All right. We've got a few people joining in. We just started the webinar, so it looks like folks are just starting to join. Welcome in to CEP Live, everybody. It's good to be back with you this week. We're going to give everybody just a few minutes to log in. We'll get started around 3:05. So if you've got those email reminders that are coming to you every single week, thanks for joining in. If you haven't gotten the email reminders and you want to, there's a little link here. Also, a QR code you could use your phone if you wanted to just hold up over that little grid of little designs right there. And today we're going to have a really nice discussion with one of our experts at the Cognitive Empowerment Program. So we want to encourage you guys to be asking questions, to use the chat, to be able to use the Q&A to really kind of get your questions in with our experts. And a lot of people, when they join our webinar, they get curious about what does it look like to join in-person programming at CEP. We do our referrals to the program through Emory Cognitive Neurology. The people who participate in our research study get to do so for free. But with those referrals through cognitive neurology, we'll send you that information and that phone number. One more time, we'll play through these slides. We also record our sessions every single week, so we'll post this recording to YouTube. Don't feel like you have to write down everything. This will be available for you on YouTube. And we've got a list here of some of the upcoming topics that we're going to be discussing and sharing. This week, we're talking about visual perception. Next week, we've got our cognitive team coming in. The Get Active folks are coming in the first week of March. So we're going to be jumping back into some of that physical activity programming if you like the workouts with us. But welcome to CEP Live. We'll give everybody just one more moment to join. I know the cognitive team is putting together their topic for next week. If you want to be reminded about that, be sure to visit this https CEP Live email website or use the QR code that you see there. We'll send you an email reminder every single week for these webinars. Again, one more time, make sure that you look down at the bottom of your screen. You might see that little Q&A icon there on the right-hand side. You can use that to send Maureen all of your questions this week. We want to know what you're curious about. It helps her build her curriculum too. And if you're interested in joining our in-person programming, the number to make that appointment is 404 712 5555. So if you're interested, you want to know more from Emory Neurology, be sure to use that number to call us. And again, we're going to post all of the PowerPoints, all the slides, the recording of today up on YouTube. So all this information will be available for you to return to at any time. All right, so we're about to get started. This week we've got Maureen with our occupational therapy team. Next week we've got our cognitive team coming in, all that brain teaser, how to keep a calendar, different sort of strategies to use from day to day or what they'll be sharing with you guys. But I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. I'm going to let Maureen just kind of jump in and say hey to everybody this week. We're so excited to have her not only as someone who is a educator at our program in person at Emory, but also to be able to share with you guys here. So, Maureen is one of those people, she really kind of exemplifies the fact that our research program is a partnership with Emory and Georgia Tech. And Georgia Tech really comes in a lot with questions about home design, how to modify our houses and the places that we live every day the most to be the safest. So that we can live independently as possible. And she's been working with the team at Georgia Tech to talk about that, unpack that question, to study that. How do we stay as independent as possible? How do we stay connected to all those things that promote joy, purpose, health, and wellness, and stay as safe as possible? So Maureen's going to share a little bit about some innovations, a little bit about some environment today for her chat. But she has a background in nearly 34 years of practicing occupational therapy and really focusing on how do we maximize independence for adults with cognitive or even physical limitations. She is an aging in place specialist. And if you're wanting more information about how to stay in home longer, aging in place is exactly what you want to know about. And she collaborates with National Home Builders Association and the research collaborators at Georgia Tech to be a part of this aging in place research that she's going to share with you guys. Specifically, how do we use our environments and design and technology? But this week we have something that I think she can attest to that comes up all the time at CEP, which is talks about visual perception. Maureen, I feel like this is a talk that it's impacting people's lives every single day, but they're maybe not even aware of like how much it's affecting their lives every day, and maybe even the extent that it's impacting them, and some of the really easy to access tools that we can use at home to help support us and navigating those things a little bit safer. So yeah, welcome to CEP Live, Maureen.
Thanks, Megan. I'm really glad to be here.
And if you've seen Maureen before, she's really open to questions. She really wants your questions. So we want to encourage you guys to really throw them out as you get it along the way. And Maureen, can you tell us a little bit about how this topic came up for the folks that are in our study at CEP, and how it affects the larger population of people with memory impairment, cognitive impairment, and physical limitations as well?
Right. This is it's kind of a unique little niche within occupational therapy, and we work with children, those with neurological disorders, those with MCI, later adulthood, on this particular topic of visual perception. So it's not one of those commonly used words, right, that we're throw around here and there. It's a unique way that we view our environment, and there are many different facets to it. So I thought it would be interesting to kind of get that word in your vocabulary, and then just explain what it is. It may or may not be affecting you. It may affect someone you do know, but I think just learning about it and having a better understanding of what it is just good information.
Sometimes visual perception can affect our driving. And
Yes.
Maureen's going to talk about that a little bit. She's a really good resource about this specific conversation. So if you're curious about how visual perception is related or correlated to some of the driving
Mhm.
changes that you may be seeing in yourself, or maybe someone in your home or a loved one, she's going to also kind of touch base on that as well. So Maureen, I'm going to let you pull up your slides.
Okay. All right. Are we seeing that, guys?
I can see them, and
Yeah.
I
Okay.
really love I'm appreciating the contrast in your colors. Maureen has been teaching me about contrasting colors, so I'll go
That's
ahead and
part of
let
visual
you
perception,
take
right?
it away.
Okay, well, thank you all for being here today. I appreciate you joining. So today we've mentioned, we're talking about this thing called visual perception. So it's the actual definition is our brain's ability to, there, there are a lot of things associated diseases related to the eye, or issues, with cataracts, for example, and you just kind of get those changed out, and you're good as new. But visual perception falls in kind of a different category. It's how we either process this visual information that goes through our brain, right, back through our eyes, this loop, or how we do not process it. So I like to kind of describe it as a glitch in the vision brain connection. So again, it's not about, I'm colorblind, or, I have glaucoma, or anything like that. It's how we perceive our environment. So not about glasses. It cannot be corrected with glasses. So we're going to talk obviously about this, kind of what visual perception is. We're also going to touch on how our eyes change as we age, and they do age, quite a bit in different ways. And of course, it ties into how we function in our daily routines. So we'll talk about some simple changes. That you could make in your daily life, even just adding a certain light bulb to improve how you manage your environment. And then, lastly, if you feel that you are having problems that are more than just needing glasses or needing to see your eye doctor, we'll give you some direction on who to contact and how to do that. So I think many of us, Megan alluded to, earlier, we may have these little shifts in some of our visual perceptual skills throughout the day, maybe just kind of annoying. We maybe don't even realize exactly, what's going on. So maybe more difficulty with managing the signs and driving through Atlanta, keeping track of routes and navigation, getting lost maybe in a familiar location. I joke with my husband about not finding the ketchup in the refrigerator when we have 3 in there. But that could also be a visual scanning type of thing, of not seeing the whole picture. Also, visual perception can come into play with even managing our businesses, our paperwork, our checkbooks, our bill paying, and also having deficits in this area also cause an accident in your home or falling. So we're going to talk about all those different segments and hopefully give you some ideas that you could even modify your home, whether or not you have these issues or not. So these are some of the visual perceptual skills that we test and look at. So I'm going to go through each one of these and just give you a little example on what it actually means, because some of these words like figure ground are just, they're not in our vocabulary. So all of us have done a lot of use of our visual system today and a lot of use of our perceptual skills today. So first, the green box is visual scanning and discrimination. So basically, we use those skills today when we picked out what we were going to wear. We were able to match our socks together. We were able to determine which was the shampoo, which was the conditioner, which was the body wash. We could tell what the milk was and what the creamer was. We could tell those differences, right? So that's visual scanning and visual specifically discrimination, being able to determine one thing from another. The yellow box is depth perception. We've all heard of what that is, but if you didn't rear end anybody today and you're out driving on Atlanta roads, then your depth perception must be pretty decent. So is judging where we are in relationship to other items in our environment. So we could say, gee, I'm a few feet away from my laptop here, so that's easy to figure out. Or, here's my phone, that's 3 feet away. But it gets a little more complicated when we're dealing with moving vehicles and driving. So that can get a little complex. Also, even just going up the stairs, navigating a staircase or curbs, if we're not seeing the proper height that the curb, for instance, is, and we're not able to process that through and lift our foot accordingly to clear it, that could indicate a problem with depth perception. Visual memory, that's kind of those internal maps of knowing where things are, right? So we have a basket where we keep our keys. So that's my visual memory. I know where to go get my keys because which I lose my phone pretty often, but then think back to where was I? Oh, yeah, I went outside and set it on the table outside. Okay. And then the benefit of having visual memory is the ability to be able to go out and say, yeah, it's on the table outside and I left it there. It gets much more complicated and much more frustrating when we don't have that visual memory to rely on. Next up is spatial orientation, and that is knowing where we are in space. And so this is about directions, knowing common roots that we take, being able to remember what those roots are. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but it's, knowing the correct exit to get off at, for example, to go to your daughter's house, knowing the correct direction on 400 or 85, northbound, southbound, knowing how to move smoothly in the lane back and forth. Knowing what floor to hit when you're going to see your doctor, right? I mean, some of these buildings are crazy and big and hard to navigate, but if there's a problem with being able to follow the directions and do that, there could be an issue with spatial orientation. So knowing our environment. The next one, I guess this is kind of a green color. This one is called visual closure. Kind of an odd thing, but it's our ability to see things if we do not have the whole picture in front of us. So as an example, I put here, so if I was looking in my closet for the dog's leash and I see a bunch of coats, didn't see the dog leash hanging there, but then just in the bottom half, I see a piece of the red dog leash hanging out from underneath the coats. So I knew, right, that that's the dog leash. But someone with a visual closure problem is not going to make that connection. All right. The last one is figure ground. And not stand your ground, figure ground. So this is the idea of being able to sort through a lot of visual things. I use an example of a bowl of keys. Okay, I have to go to my neighbor's house, get their key out to let the dog out. So I know that theirs has a red dot on it. So I'm able to look through these 25 keys and locate that and go to their house and let the dog out. So we'll have an example of that, and I think it'll be easier to understand. It's a picture that probably most of you have seen at some point throughout your life. So here are the experts, right? I really admire pilots. I don't care what kind, helicopter pilots, jet pilots, fighter pilots, whatever they are. These people are incredibly amazing with their visual perceptual skills. So if we think about it, this pilot is sitting here and being able to read all the dials, listen to the information, process all the auditory information, the visual information that's on his screen or her screen, and be able to understand where plane is in relationship to other planes in the environment. So interestingly, there was a study that was done way back in World War II in the psychology program. And they said they found that the pilots who flunked out of training, the major cause of failure with that flight training was what they called slow perception. So inability to see visually and act on things rapidly. I put a few pictures. I think that's the streets of Atlanta. Oh, actually, that says Sacramento, but you get the idea. Just navigating the highways in our state can be very challenging and require a lot of all of those skills that I just talked about, and to be able to move them quickly and to understand and process that information rapidly. There was a guy named Thurstone, and I'm not sure if I believe what he's saying here, but anyways, I thought I'd include it. He claims that perceptual speed comprises one of the pillars of intelligence. That's what he thought. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but that was his idea. Okay, so again, how we perceive our environment. Read the newspaper, making a cup of coffee, hopping onto the computer to pay a few checks, navigating the stairs, all things that we perhaps did this morning. But when a perceptual system is intact, everything is easy and runs smoothly. But when there's a small disturbance or a flaw, things can get a little bit frustrating. When do these flaws happen, right? These flaws occur when there is some sort of a neurological or dysfunction in the system within the vision and brain. So we do see this in autism. Sometimes children have visual processing issues. They may isolate on certain details and have a very strong sense of visual attention. It may also occur with traumatic brain injury, could be mild or severe or a concussion, but that can cause visual changes also. And these perceptual changes we're talking about. A lot of neurological disorders, such as Parkinson's disease, could manifest these changes. A CVA or stroke could have that, as well as multiple sclerosis. There is a disorder, the dementia family, which we do have members that have been in our program at CEP who have a diagnosis of posterior cortical atrophy. And this of the dementia family is particularly focused on the visual system, and it disturbs one's visual system dramatically to the point where they are unable to reference how distant they are, how far they are from something. It can be quite severe, unable to walk within their own home. We had one woman who described it really well. She told us that it felt like when she was standing out in a parking lot with her family and she saw the white strip where cars were to park and then the black background, that she became, even though she knew where she was, she said it was very frightening because the back part of the driveway area looked as if she would fall into that space and that she needed to stay on the white lines. So I thought that really gave an eye-opening, view of what it may be like to experience that disorder. It is very rare, fortunately, but it is it does have a lot of very bad manifestations. And then Alzheimer's dementia. So can also have components of visual perceptual changes. We see people at our program who have mild cognitive impairment, so that's the very early stages. And so some of them have talked about some perceptual changes that they have, but as the disease progresses, people may experience more problems, and we will talk about what those problems might be. So again, any glitch in the system is going to make things much more difficult. It could be realizing that you have difficulty finding the milk in the refrigerator, unable to locate your papers on your desk, having trouble with merging because you're missing signs on the highway, missing a stop sign because a branch is blocking the sign. Numbers or letters could become more difficult to distinguish. And then a big one, getting turned around in a familiar place. This is one of the questions that we ask in different ways on our questionnaires at CEP. Has your loved one gotten lost in the neighborhood? Has your loved one, are they able to navigate outside of the neighborhood independently and return home? That is something that we do see with some of our clients. Okay, so I thought I would just throw this one at you. Thanks to Dr. Felicia Goldstein. She's one of the neuropsychologists here at the neurology department, and she uses this as a test for visual perception. Now, this is actually a super high-level test. The ones that are most commonly used are asking people to draw the clock and then put like 4 o'clock and put the arms on the clock so we can see how the orientation looks, or also having someone complete a 3D rectangle, right? But this Ray Osrith figure is very sensitive to any sort of progression with dementia. And Dr. Goldstein could then figure out where in the brain the processing problems may be occurring. So what she would ask is this person to sit down and just copy this figure as it is while you're looking at it. And she's looking for 36 different assessment points. And then they finish that task. And then Dr. Goldstein or the other psychologists on the team would say, okay, it's been 10 minutes. Now I'd like you to come back and sit down and just draw that picture that I had you draw previously. With no, you can't look at the other picture. This is just strictly from memory. And so very difficult, right? But it's looking at a lot of those things, like visual attention, visual memory, concentration, visual constructional skills, memory planning, organization, a lot of different skills. So that is the Ray Osrith test. Okay, so here's a picture of figure ground. I was using the example of, trying to look in all your keys and sorting out and trying to find the correct key. But this is a really good example right here. And this was in a lot of psychology books, and it's asking you to see the foreground or the background. So many of you looking at this may see a white vase. Others may see the black silhouette of 2 faces. Or you may be able to go back and forth and see the white vase and then switch and be able to see the silhouettes of the black faces. Here's an example of visual closure. In this, what we're looking at, where it says B in the unfinished figure on the left of your screen, is an unfinished picture, right? So we want to know if this picture were finished, which of the four, A, B, C, or D, would this B one be exactly alike? And so you can see some are moved a little differently to one way. The legs are different. The legs are angled. The legs are straight. The circles are placed in different positions. And some people, can write away, boom, that's the answer. Other people have to really focus and, take a little while to get the answer, like myself. Okay, but I do know the answer on this one, and it is the first one. So if that B figure were finished, it would look like the first one in line there. That would be the answer to that visual closure. And now another visual closure, the one below, the same idea, where it says C. If you were to finish all the lines, which figure, 1, 2, 3, or 4, would that be? And so in this case, you can look at it for a minute or two. We showed this class a few weeks ago, and I think I hadn't even gotten the words out of my mouth, and one woman had already said D. And it's like, yes, you're right, D. So she was really strong on that visual closure skills. Okay, so why does any of this matter? Because it affects our daily functioning, right? Maybe we don't know these terms, but it can affect how we're living. So can you see the chocolate syrup here? There it is on the door. Okay, so in order to be able to really see our environment well, a strategy that you could use is probably, if this were your refrigerator, to try to pull things out and then organize things according to what they are. So example, you have your yogurts, put your yogurts all together and put them in the same place all the time, especially if you have someone in the home who has memory dysfunctions. You want to keep things exactly the same. The milk goes in the top right, keep the milk in the top right. So simply organizing and simplifying the refrigerator, but also the kitchen and many areas around the house is very helpful for the person who may be suffering from a little bit of problems with visual scanning. So we're going to talk about applications to everyday life. And some of you who know me, I'm not sure who's on the call, but those of you who do know that I'm very interested in studying how to make environments suitable for older adults with MCI as they age. The goal is to keep everybody at home. Don't say that word nursing home, right? Try to keep everybody at home. One of the biggest things that we can do is improve the safety in the home by reducing fall risks. Falls are the greatest cause of injury, greatest cause of death for those over the age of 65. It's really, it's a problem. So we want to keep you safe and at home. So we're going to talk about some visual perceptual related things that you can do. Okay, here's an environmental concern. Unfortunately, a lot of these pictures are from my house. So I have some issues here at my home, things that I can't really fix too well. And I'll tell you why. So is this actually one piece of flooring? Do you see the dark wood and the tile and then the rug, like all on one surface? Are you able to see that that is a step down? So I know it's hard to see, and this is always a bit of a puzzler for the group, but if you look at the brown flooring, that's the upper level. It's actually a step down onto the white tile. And we know that because we're talking about it, we can see it. But sometimes even if you were standing right above it, it could still be very difficult to tell the difference between certain steps and transitions. Even with the floor changing, it can still be difficult. And then, of course, create a fall. Okay, this one, another danger zone in my home. I think this one looks more confusing, actually, but this is also a step down. So Unfortunately, this is right around the front door. So when people come in, we have had some problems. No one has fallen and hurt themselves, but my father-in-law was visiting and my mother-in-law, and he tripped on this, but fortunately was able to kind of catch himself. So I was like, oh my goodness, this was years ago. And I thought that's the end of that. So there's some things that you can do if you have a similar situation like this at home. You could put bright orange tape along that upper edge so the eye would visually be cued to see that. And it seems really simple, but it can make a real big difference. Bright orange or bright yellow tape might not fit your decor, but it is a solution. And this is what I did. I went out to the garage and just grabbed some of these cones that I had that the kids used, and put cones in all those what I considered the danger zones of my home when there was a step down and visitors were in the house. So you could modify or do something like that in your home if you felt that you needed to. Unfortunately, this is my staircase. So this is what I looked down on as I went downstairs this morning. It's as I descend, again, not ideal, because it is difficult to see the edge of the tread, right? It just flows in and it's kind of that gray. There's no contrast. So the good news is that this particular area has bright white lighting, and bright white lighting is really important as well as daylight. Those are two things I can't don't underestimate. So this is easy to see because the lighting is there. There are bilateral railings to hold on to. Actually, the final step on the descent of a staircase, the final one is one that people most likely fall on. So it's important to make sure that railings are secure and accessible on both sides of the railing. Sometimes individuals may not be able to see the contrast between the stair to the flooring. So if it's, say, brown wood and brown wood, or if it's the same color carpeting and they just can't see it, or the lighting is poor, what I would recommend is putting a rug there. Not big on throw rugs, but in this case, it shows a fine definition at the base of the staircase and could potentially reduce a fall. And I wouldn't use a dark color like navy or black, but something that has a red, an orange, a yellow that will visually, again, catch the eye. So the person on the descent is going to see this is the final step. Of course, these are set up pretty nicely with the strips. I know that most people probably would not want to do that in their homes, but anyways, that is a way to definitely see it. We did have one woman in our program who had tripped and broken her ankle on her back deck, and it was kind of a gray stain. And so what she did was just paint the edge of the tread white. And I actually was able to go over to her home and see it, and it looked beautiful. And she said it was so helpful. She has lighting out on the back deck, very bright lighting and all of that, but just that additional line where you could see that this is where the change occurs is very helpful. Just another picture kind of this depth perception and spatial orientation, and move on from there. So I want to talk a little bit about navigational learning and memory. And it is one of those skills. It's part of our visual perceptual system, but it's critical to all organisms. And there's a lot of research out there that talks about how important it is for us to find our way through our environment without getting lost. And that requires those embedded roots, right? Those memory roots that we have in our brain. So even animals that have been studied that leave their nests, their burrow, their den, or their home to find water are able to find their way back. So being able to go out and find your food, water, it's critical for the survival of all organisms. And it's evolved apparently in almost all species, which is very interesting. So with humans, we encode these roots, and it becomes really an overlearned skill. So we know how to get, to the grocery store. We know how to get to our daughter's house. We know how to get to work. We don't even think about it. We know how to stop and get coffee and then go to work. It just becomes part of what we call procedural memory, just like riding a bike. But we rely, especially if it's depending if it's a familiar place or not. But we do rely on landmarks, and those are what we call visual cues. And if there is any damage to the hippocampus, it can affect that. It can affect that and spatial learning and memory. And they did some studies with mice and damaged a group of the mice hippocampus. The others did not have damage. They sent them through a maze with their water source at the end. And as you may guess, it was those with the damage to their brain that were unable to find their water source, whereas the other group of mice were able to locate their way. So this skill is really important. And there are certain things that you can do to protect yourself, whether or not you feel that you have this, maybe a problem with it or not. And so anytime you're going out in the car, anytime you're going on a walk, first let someone know where you're going. I'm going out for a walk. I'll be back in a few minutes. I'm going around the block. Just briefly let a person know where you're going. The other thing I think is really important is to keep your phone charging at all times. So especially if you're in the car, make sure your phone is always charged. If you don't have a charger, go out and buy a charger, stick it in there, and keep the phone charging. So if you have an emergency and get a moment where you just really do not know where you are, it can be very frightening, but you'll have your phone, you can call a loved one, you can call 911, and it'll be okay. And also the same with just out taking walks in the woods, in the neighborhood, wherever. Keep a phone with you, keep it charged. If you get turned around or take a few loops that you're not recognizing, go to Google and have Google direct you home, right? And Google will direct you home. Google's very good about that. There are some other safety nets that I just wanted to mention because I'd like to address the audience not really knowing what situation you're in at home, but some of the members or people that may be listening have a person or loved one who tends to wander, and that can be a very frightening situation. And if that's the case, there is a program called Project Lifesaver. And Project Lifesaver was created to locate missing people, specifically those with dementia, Alzheimer's, autism, and epilepsy. And you sign up you could just Google Project Lifesaver and it will explain, the steps on how to sign up for that. But it uses a radio transmitter. So if someone is at the point where they actually need that, then that's what you would do. So it's either wrist or the ankle, and the person can be tracked and located through the program. And if they do get lost, Project Lifesaver can help locate them. Another suggestion for you or your loved one are a car tracker. If you are concerned that you may have a little bit of a problem with this and you want your partner to just be able to keep track of where the car is, just in case, just like an extra layer of safety, car trackers are a good option because the person at home can check and see where the vehicle is remotely. There's also Apple AirTags, of course, and that can be used for finding wallets, your purse, and that has remote access. With the Apple products, there's also the Find My app, and that requires you having at least 2 Apple products. So if you lose your phone, you can find your iPad. If you lose your iPad, you can find your wallet because you've put the AirTag in your wallet, right? And like beep, 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 and let you know where it is. So that's good for the Apple users. And there's also an app which I like called Life 360. And this is an Android Apple compatible, which is really nice. So like in our house, my husband is Apple and I'm Android, but we could use Life 360 together and have no problem with it. It is free. There is, some higher levels that you can pay for it, but you can't track where the other person is. So it has to be, of course, on at least 2 devices. So you just have it on your phone. As long as the other person has their phone, you can track where each other are. And I think as the system goes on, you can actually see where the car is. You can see how fast the car is going. There are a lot of other bells and whistles there. But Life 360 might be something worthwhile if you're an Android Apple household. Just mentioning this in here quickly, this is through the American Journal of Physical Medicine and Rehab. In 2007, they published an article about a particular test, which is called the Motor Free Visual Perception Test. And they talked about how this particular test has been an indicator on an individual's driving capabilities on their road tests. This is also used at Emory in the OT department. They do driving assessments there and use this test, among many others, to see whether or not a person is able to safely drive. Driving is a big issue, so I thought we should just touch on it a bit. Some of you perhaps are aware of how these evaluations work, and some may not. Emory Outpatient Occupational Therapy Department at Johns Creek is now doing the testing, no longer downtown. And these tests, wherever you decide to have them, I've also included barbers, but I also have a long list that I gave to Megan that we could send to you if you're interested in just more information about how to talk about, whether driving should continue, and also some options for being tested. What it is, it's a two-part testing. And so it's a private pay. So insurance does not cover this in most cases. Maybe if it was workman's comp, they would, but Medicare, they do not cover that. You do need a physician referral to have done, however. And the therapist will have you in the clinic looking at your hand functioning, your fine motor, your grip, see how well your arms and legs move. They'll check your balance. They'll check your eyes. They'll see how quickly you can respond to certain visual stimulation. They'll do that motor-free visual perception test. They'll do a few cognitive tests, the trail making test, you maybe are familiar with that, to see what the cognitive level is like in reasoning and judgment and memory. And then as long as part one is okay, and you don't have to be 100% on it. If it's reasonable, then they would move on and have you do a second part of the test, which is in a car, a modified car, and they have you drive around town on off ramps, just like when you're 16 and had to, take your driving test. So the thing about once that's finished, they come up with a conclusion, they give you the information, and your loved one explain what they found, what the recommendations are. The good thing, it's not an all or none thing. So oftentimes people have these driving tests, and many of our clients have taken them because they were concerned and have passed them with flying colors, no issues whatsoever. However, sometimes they may say, I believe you should not drive at nighttime. Just drive during the day. We had one gentleman who needed to wear a particular type of glasses to reduce glare. He thought he was having all sorts of problems with driving, as did his partner, but it was really just the visual glare. And so the glasses were fine, and he's able to drive okay. Sometimes he'll say, okay, highways, stay away from them, local neighborhoods, and only drive during the daytime. Of course, the worst scenario is I'm saying we find that, based on our clinical assessment, things look so poor that we cannot recommend that you drive. In that situation, they then discuss alternative ways of transportation. Okay, we're going to shift away from that driving talk and talk about what happens when our eyes get old. Just like the rest of our body, right? Everything falls apart. So when our eyes get older, the cells, which are called photoreceptors in our eyes, they're cones, the cells are called cones, they see color and they change. We lose some of those cells over time. So if looking at this nice color wheel, we're more apt to see the yellow and the oranges, right? And even that bright green is okay. But some of those blues and purples tend to look kind of gray. So it's hard to differentiate. Sometimes blurry or cloudy vision can be really challenging to look at things that have patterns or dots. So we often will say, well, don't put striped wallpaper or striped carpeting or dots on your carpeting or wallpaper because it's too busy. I call it visual clutter. Just want to keep it clean and simple. The pale yellows tend to look kind of whitish. So if you've ever been into a senior community, they're doing a really good job with design. usually, and doing strong contrasting colors. So you'll see that the door frames are one color, the door is another color, the switch plate for the is usually a different color as well. So in contrasting at the base also to the top, so it's easier for seniors to see, and they do that on purpose, right? And also with the flooring, and then the lighting overhead is very bright, so people can see their rooms, can see their room numbers. So you could try some of that in your own home if you wanted to. If you're planning on painting, however, few recommendations there. You do want to avoid the semi-gloss and the high gloss because that will create more glare. And we recommend more of a flat or an eggshell finish. Here is a picture that I really love because I think it says a lot. So aging eyes like high contrasting colors, right? And they dislike busy patterns. And I think this just kind of shows it all. The picture on the right with the red tablecloth and the bright like green, it's just very easy to see. The picture on the left is absolutely beautiful, but it's kind of all blends together, right? It's white, it's cream, it's a little gold, and the definition is there. So in our households, we need that definition, especially when we age. We need the definition to counteract the changes that are already happening, right? Just normal aging. Again, some of these dark colors like black and navy, some of the advanced stages of dementia can see these as holes. And so if you're thinking about putting a new rug, in front of your sink or something, not big on throw rugs in general, but if you do need one, get one that's brightly colored and easy to see for aging eyes, and stay from the black or the navies. Thought I would put these in here to appreciate aging eyes. So if you want to be able to pick out your coffee cup really easily, get yourself a yellow or a red one. These come in all different types, so just go ahead online and you can find anything in yellow and red that you're looking for. Simple things can work. So we have recommended to some of our clients, I can't find my water bottle. So, okay, one woman in particular, I'll never forget her, Jackie. She was very upset about losing her water bottle multiple times a day. So we just made this little suggestion of using a bright color tape around the bottle and see if it helped. And she came back and she told the whole class very excitedly that it worked. And she was so happy about it. She was no longer losing her water bottle. We had another gentleman, and he had the same thing. The problem was with his phone. So he was constantly using his iPhone. And so he found one of these that had kind of a reflective, but like a green, yellow reflective, and he put that on his phone. And he said he was telling that to all of his golf partners because he could not believe something that simple could actually work. So you can do that if you want. If you're having trouble finding the remote or your key fob or your phone, also we sometimes suggest just the shampoo conditioner, could be different colored bottles, if that's an issue, especially with the glasses being off. And I pulled together some pictures to show you. A nice orange toothbrush, easier to see than white. Different kinds of remotes are available, or if you don't, want to get a remote like this, just get a thick piece of orange or bright green tape and put TV remote on the front of it, and that should do the trick. I always like to include Mr. Beam. I do not own stock in Mr. Beam. I have a few around here, and I like them because our clients like them and use them because they're easy. So these are battery operated, movement activated lights. And no wires. There's lots of different varieties from when I first started talking about this. So any big box store has a great variety. But you can put these on the stairs. You can put them in the route from your bed to your toilet. I think that's kind of key because tripping in the middle of the night, we're not really awake. It does happen. And if you're sensitive to, or have trouble sleeping, you'd be better off to get ones that have more of an amber lighting because that is less disruptive to the sleep cycle. If not, just go ahead and use the bright white ones. There's also been some research that even red lights, they did a study out of Germany, red night lights are also as effective as amber, not disrupting the sleep cycle. And again, these are on Amazon or any Home Depot, Lowe's store that you happen to go to. Okay, so now I wanted to shift a little bit and just give you guys some ideas on activities that you can do at home that will challenge your brain and your visual processing and attention skills. So, puzzles. Puzzles are good. Puzzles are good for our brain. So, is there research, definitive research that says, they are? No, I haven't found that. But they are good for fixing shapes, matching colors, attention to detail. Make sure you have good lighting over this stuff when you're putting a puzzle together. Flat puzzles are fine, but if you're like, oh, those are too easy, I'm not dealing with that, you could do a 3D puzzle like the one on the left. If you want to try something even different, there's something called Jigzone, JIGZONE.com, and then you can actually do puzzles online. As an occupational therapist, I think feeling and touching and moving them around is an important sensory part of puzzling, but feel free to do Jigsaw if you like. Also, the variety of word search or crossword puzzles are also good for visual scanning and visual attention, visual discrimination. The one on the left is the large print. Easy on the eyes. The one on the right is actually a three-dimensional word search, which that could be kind of fun too, a little more challenging. Excuse me, let me move to the next slide there. And I love games. Many games are great for visual perception. The one in the middle there is Battleship. It's an old game where you just play the other person and have to try to sink their ships, but you have to mark off like A4 and you have to follow the grid and put a peg where that is. So there's a lot of scanning, of visual attention. It can be kind of tough actually, and the pieces are small. But again, Battleship is a great game. And also Connect 4. It's three-dimensional, right? So in this game, it sets up on the frame and you take turns putting your yellow or your red in. And the goal is to get 4 in a row. Connect 4. So either 4 reds or 4 yellows. And so this requires a lot of scanning, looking at diagonal patterns, looking at horizontal and vertical patterns. And it's fun. And Scrabble is one of my favorites. Scrabble is also good for visual processing and visual attention. You don't need to actually play the game and count all the numbers and do that. You could just put them out on a table and then just make words, just create words. So you're saying and creating words. And I think that's, unless you want to, keep score and that kind of thing, that's great. But you can modify it by just sitting there and just creating words on your own or with someone else. And can't underestimate Uno and just playing regular card games. Of course, games like bridge, gin rummy, go fish, concentration, with your grandkids, war, any of those games are great. So I just want to mention in closing, if you notice or this, you think you might have something going on, first of all, you do want to get your eyes just checked regularly, right? Every year you need your eyes checked because any problem can be fixed hopefully right away. If you think it's something more serious, like visual perceptual disturbance that you or your loved one may have, if you have a neurologist who you're seeing, I would make an appointment with that office and ask to be seen and explain to them what your concerns are. Or go to your primary care doctor and explain to them your concerns and, could you have a referral to see a neurologist? And then there is a specialty if you needed to see someone very specialized. It is a neuro-ophthalmologist, and that would be something that your neurologist, of course, would decide if something like that was necessary. And that is all I have. That's the end of the show, guys. So, I talked a long time. Thank you for staying with me. I will stop sharing my screen right now. And if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them if I can.